you to everybody for joining us again. I'm Robert Howard with Amateur Music Network, and thank you so much to Scott Pingel for being so generous with your time. There's a few of us that are not bass players that have been getting as much out of these sessions or more as the bass players. We're just in awe of how methodical you are and just your whole approach to teaching. I know it's helped me with my own teaching, and thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Hey, guys, it's great to be back with you again. And now finally getting to play some music instead of talking into wonky technique all day long, which we'll do a little bit of that. It's hard to get away from that. But, let's get into one of the classic standard pieces of the orchestral bass repertoire, Beethoven Symphony No. 5, Scherzo and Trio. And before we get into talking about it, I want to always start from the perspective of the sound of the music, and I want to talk about favorite recordings because that's the thing that we can kind of share. And there are so many. This is one of the most recorded pieces in the classical music repertoire, and my personal favorite, I think I've mentioned before, is Carlos Kleiber conducting the Vienna Philharmonic. And it was recorded for Deutsche Grammophon years ago. And then tonight I thought, you know what? Everything seems to be on YouTube these days. So I looked up and I found a video of Carlos Kleiber conducting Beethoven Symphony No. 5 with the Vienna Philharmonic in Mexico. And it's like a bootleg of a TV broadcast. And so I'm going to share my screen if I can. Desktop, there we go, share. And we got to check this dude out. Can you see my screen? Right. I hope you can hear it. All right. Bravo, Carlos. And then how do I stop screen sharing? I don't even know how to do that. We'll stop share. There it is. How do we get out of this? Sorry. All right. Could you all hear that okay?
Mostly, yes.
Okay, mostly. All right. Yeah, shoot. Then it wasn't as effective as I was hoping it
No,
would
no,
be.
no. It was good. There were a couple spots that were staticky, but
It was staticky.
got the
Yeah.
idea.
But one of the cool things is watching Carlos Kleiber move. You can see the gesture and how the energy and how excited he is and his facial expressions. I just love watching the way he does Beethoven. And another thing, I hope you were able to hear it, is the textural clarity in the string playing, like how crisp the articulation is. And that you can hear all the different parts coming in. That textural clarity is so important in Beethoven. And that rhythmic vitality and that rhythmic accuracy. But as a contrast to what I was just talking about, though, is in the scherzo, excuse me, I gotta, and in the scherzo is the creaminess of the legato. And these two opposing characters it's important that we communicate that in the way that we play this piece. So, I can talk a lot about bowings and fingerings and rhythm, and I will, but all of that ultimately has to express a type of character and a feeling. And what I think about in the scherzo, it's kind of funny, Beethoven, it's a very sort of dark sound. It's kind of a shocking thing for a scherzo. A scherzo means joke in Italian, and it's like it's supposed to be funny and kind of lighthearted. And it starts out with this thing that features the basses and the cellos, this very dark minor tonality that kind of emerges out. And around this time, Beethoven was going deaf, apparently, or starting to confront that. And so I always think of this first section as kind of a brooding, thinking about this fate of his deafness coming. And then after that second fermata, when the French horns come in, that magnificent, powerful moment, yum bum bum bum, and that's like a classic Beethoven motive, is a 3-note pickup. And to me, it's like that typical sort of fist-waving, defiant quality. Dun 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 team, bum 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 bum. Like, no, he refuses to accept this fate, and there's this utter defiance through that section, and then it goes back, sinks a little lower into this brooding character again. And so as we go through this and we work on the bowings and fingerings, those are the kinds of musical directions that we want to try and think about. All right. So the first thing that I want to do is just have everybody just double check their posture before we get started. If you remember what we talked about, if you're a standing player, that the instrument you can balance it. Hopefully people have been practicing that. They got the nut at a pretty good height. So not like way over your head, so you'd have to reach way up with your hand. And that the bass is comfortable. If you're a sitting player, that the bass is well positioned for you to get your bow on the string. You can access all the strings. If you remember that one of those metrics that I mentioned was if your bridge is facing 12 o'clock, your body is facing 10 o'clock. So your sternum and your hips are facing the corner of the bridge on the G string side. So I'm an advocate of playing with a slight tilt of the instrument. Bass players that play with a celloistic position, that causes a lot of problems, especially for French bow players, to get around to the top string. We covered that in the first session. So I recommend a little tilt to your bass, which will give you a lot more access. Good. All right. So in both classes, we talked about basics with our fingering and how to close the string, and we talked about getting around the instrument, and we did some work with bowing curves, like getting around the bridge, if you remember that. And so I want to quick review that before we begin, or as we begin. If you could set your bow on the G string, And we'll just rock the bow down and around, just a long down bow and around to the E string. And then go the other way. And again. The other way. Yes, and feel that curve, especially as we do this Beethoven, this one, we're starting up bow on a low string and feeling the forward curve around the bridge. Just do that a few times. And double check as you do that, that your bow is perpendicular to the string. When you look down, you should see, if you can, see a 90-degree angle between the hair and the string. And I like to play for this a slight tilt of the hair. So turn the stick toward your body a little bit. So playing on a little bit on the side of the hair for this. Again, just try that, and you tried it for now. Just use about 1/2 to 2/3 of your bow for this. Good. I have to turn this thing off so it doesn't beep. Okay, to make this bigger there, now I can see everybody better. All right, good. And then the other one that we worked on a little bit was reverse curves. There aren't as many reverse curves in this particular piece, but there are some. So start with an up bow on the top string, and we'll do the same thing. And as you do that, feel it rolling from one string to the next, and feel that curve that comes out this way and rounds this way. Yeah. Good. I'm keep going. I'm kind of watching people on the screen there. Yeah, beautiful. Very, very nice. Ooh, I'm seeing some really nice bow holds too. Gorgeous. I'm envious. Beautiful. And you know, obviously I can't hear any of you, but as you listen to yourself, listen for a quality of resonance, that the string moves very freely, that you have a really nice resonance in the string, that you're getting the core with the bow, not without pressing. All right, so let's get into the scherzo. Let's start with the first section. The first thing I want to start with is the left hand and the fingering. So we're going to first work on just finding the notes where we're going to trap the left hand without worrying too much about the right hand. So let's just go over the fingering together. Just use separate bows. Don't worry about the bowing. We can start up bow. So it starts first finger on low G, and then first finger on C. And that's that barring technique. I kind of roll my weight from G into C. If everybody has their part handy. So from the allegro there. So first finger on the E string, and then I shift up to 4, and then 2 on G. And then this is that same thing. I roll my left hand onto the C, shift up to E flat, and then there's the D. And now I use first finger for F sharp, and then G. So I have specific reasons why I picked that fingering, because of the ease of preparing every note. And that's a really important part of string playing, is being able to prepare what's coming. You can't always do it so well, but this fingering allows a really good preparation. So I've prepared that C with using the bar, as opposed to if I had my hand only on G and then jumped over to C, I wouldn't be able to connect it. So that's why I use that rolled bar technique. Same thing here. I'm going to roll that second finger across G and C. Then up to E flat. And notice where my first finger is. My first finger is still hanging out on the D string. I don't know if you can see that. So when I went up, while I play E flat and D, my first finger is already getting the F sharp prepared. So if I were to go up and do it this way, and my first finger is over here on the G string, then I got to send it back to the D string. And so that's an extra move that's unnecessary. The other function of leaving my first finger on the D string is it mutes it. Because if I go up, I might hit my open D string with my bow. But if I leave my first finger hanging out on the D string, it'll actually mute that string. So that's a really important part of bass playing, is again that preparation, but also that muting of a neighboring string.
But I just have a question.
Yeah.
On the cello, for us it's fifths, for you guys it's fourths.
Correct.
If playing a bar, I put the finger deliberately in the kind of the wrong place. Do you do that also, or no?
What do you mean?
Well, so that the bony part will hit both strings. In other words, if I were doing a single note, I might play more on the tip, and if I'm doing a bar,
yes. Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. Thank you for saying that, because that's a good clarification. Yeah. So as I lay, maybe it's easiest if I do this. I'm kind of on this, so like one string is on this part of the hand, and then another one is in this part of the hand. Because our strings are a little further apart than the cello, obviously. So I trap one string with this phalange. Is that what they're called? I forgot there's a distal, medial, and proximal, I think. So two different parts of the finger are trapping the strings as I roll. Or you can even, some people call it a mash fingering, where you really just kind of mash down both notes at the same time. So let's try that together, sort of, as together as it can be. Just going to do that really slowly with this rhythm, with the printed bowing, about da-dee-da-dee-da-da-da-da, down bow. We'll just do that much. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Good. Just do that much again. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Good. You guys keep repeating that, and I'm going to kind of look and just see what kinds of, if I can see any issues with people. Check your bow, that it's perpendicular to the string. I see some sagging bows. And a sagging bow is going to send you to a part of the string you don't want to go to. So try to, stay perpendicular and round around the bridge. Good. Now, I look around and I see some kind of angular shifting on a couple of people. So you can wave, if your shifts don't feel totally smooth, you can wave your hand. Yeah, okay. So if your shifting feels kind of jerky, like you're kind of slamming your hand from one position to the next, chances are two things. One, you're more likely to be a standing player than a sitting player. And second, standing players tend to squeeze the neck more than sitting players do. So what's happening, chances are, is that you're squeezing the neck with your thumb. And we talked about this in the other sessions, that trapping the string is not a matter of doing this, but it's a matter of really it's the arm weight and this torquing of the hand. So if you're one way to try to alleviate that is, well, one, your posture and your balance of the instrument has to be sound. And then try to practice. It's hard as a standing player, but at least when you get to the top string, when you get over to the G string, take your thumb off the neck and see if you can just play those notes. Starting from the G to the C. Just do that much without your thumb on the neck. It might not sound great, but you'll feel perhaps more freedom and ease of motion. And if that's too unstable, then only do the G string notes. Sitting players, you can play all of it without your thumb, because your arm can just kind of hang from the neck. Yeah, I'm watching. I've look at some people. Yeah. So now if you're trying it without your thumb and your bass is running away back this way, then what's happening is you're using your arm weight the wrong way. You want to be hugging the instrument. You want your arm weight to come toward your body. Yeah, so if your bass starts to go like this, that means you're pulling back. You want your finger and your arm weight coming toward your chest. And use your hips as a counterbalance to that. So when we play the bass, we got one thing on one side, another on the other. One side is my finger pressure, the other side is my hip pressure against that, and the end pin as well. Yeah. Good. I see some really nice bow holds and nice bow angles. Excellent. All right. So so that's food for thought for those of you that need that. And you're always welcome to email me, and we can schedule a time perhaps to get together and do a Zoom lesson. That's fine, to try and work on some of that stuff. I want to talk a little bit about how I work on framing the shapes in my hand. So the first one we already talked about is this bar. And I have a name for this. I call this blocking. And I use this, it's kind of like, imagine you're learning choreography and you're a dancer and you're like, okay, we're going to do these moves over here. That's all happening here. And then we're going to walk over here. And now we're going to do these moves over here. So it's like kind of like you're stepping through the choreography. So the first one is this bar. The next thing is playing E flat and G together. So try that, play first C and G together. And then shift up, play E flat and G together. And now play G and C together. And then shift up to E flat. Now stop on that D, feeling that first finger on F sharp. I shift back to 2 on C and play F sharp together. Even though there's no C written there, it's a positioning thing. I'm feeling that whole step shift back for the position of F sharp. So again, I go. And then I'm sorry, I skipped this one. You can play A and E flat. And then you can play D, shift back a whole step. So that's one way that I practice this sort of blocking, is I try to make double stops to find the frames of my hand. So.
Do you see, Scott, Patty's question? How do you get all those notes in one bow?
Oh, it's not one bow. Oh, great question. No, I'm playing them all separate. Yeah, yeah. When I'm doing blocking like that, the bow, I just do whatever feels comfortable. Good question. Thank you. So yeah, I'm just bowing randomly. It's just this is a totally a left hand study. Just finding the shapes and feeling the distances between the notes and in the frame of my hand. Right. And so what I worked on is the framing there, and then also the connecting. We talked a little bit about that. So for when you're playing legato, you want everything to feel as connected as possible. So this. So right there. And then my first finger is already on the A string, waiting for, I move back a half step to C, and then cross over to G. Let's just double check my time. Okay, good. Another thing I like to do to how to practice connecting things is I like to play things forward and then I play them exactly backwards. Because it's a really interesting way to just kind of see how things connect. So if you look on your page, I'll play it forward. Now I start the end of that G with an up bow, so I'm exactly reverse. And you don't have to do that exactly right now, but you can try it if you want. But it's a really interesting study, and it just starts to create an etude out of this little piece, or this little spot in the piece. So you just read the music exactly backwards, bowing, rhythm, fingering, everything. It's one of I love that practice technique. I do that all the time. So one more time. Good. So we're going to move on now to the next one, because all of those exercises we just did will apply to the same thing, but we'll move on. So this one, the slur is a little longer. It's 1 bar longer. Now we have this sforzato piano. And I wish I could ask the question, but I can't hear any of you. So sforzato, if you remember from the last question, it's a contraction between, sforzando is a contraction between 2 Italian words, subito and forzando. So suddenly with force, but it's relative to the dynamic that it's in. So he has sforzato piano. So it's not a forte piano, but it's a little, I think of it as kind of almost like not a grunt, but kind of a sigh, like, that in that moment. So it's just a little bit of extra bow speed at the front of that note, and then you slow your bow down right away. So if everybody puts their bow about where just outside the balance point, and just do a... You see, the bow speed is fast to slow. It's just a little bit of a zing at the front, and then you slow your bow down. Ya. And the bow speed, the fast bow speed is maybe just a couple of inches. Ya, because you need to sustain for a while. Good. I so wish I could hear you all doing that. All right. So then plug that back in. again. Again. And that gives that kind of, oh, like he's just opened his eyes really quickly for a moment there and then went back to kind of thinking about his fate again. Another good exercise to do for the scherzo is to practice this with open strings. And so just get rid of the left hand, but remember, well, you have to keep the left hand in mind so you know what the string crossing pattern is. So if we look at the second entrance without the left hand, the string crossing pattern is like this. So that's the right hand pattern without the left hand. And I'll leave it up to you to spend the time slowly to just kind of play it with your left hand a few times and see what your string crossing pattern is with the right hand, and then just get rid of the left hand so you can just watch your right hand. So open string practice. That's another really good practice strategy for a passage like this. All right, so let's go back one more time and play this. All right, now we get up to the part where the French horns come in, and this is the big fate moment. We talked a little bit in the class about making rounded motions with the bow, and this is an excellent spot for that, where you follow through after you play that first note and it comes around and prepares the next note. And I start each note from the string. Try that a few times. Yeah, and listen, as you do that, listen for the ringing. And I want to talk a little bit about the left hand and what I'm doing in this, which is really important. If I keep my fingers off, just only my first finger down, you hear that the G string gets activated and it's a little bit more squirrely. However, if I rest my hands down or my fingers down and I'm muting the G string, now the string that you hear ringing is just the A string. So if you see my hand, I'll turn this up. While I'm playing that, my first finger is curved and that's down, and the other fingers are draped and actually muting the other strings. So I'm not up like this at all, because then just the other strings might start ringing. So you see from this angle, it looks like I'm stopping all the strings, but there's just enough curve to clear the A string, and it's my first finger has got it trapped. And then if I don't want it to ring longer, I can then close and mute the A string, which is the string I'm playing, to stop the resonance. And that's a really important orchestral technique, is controlling the ringing of the string. You don't want stuff to bleed sometimes, because it can muddy up the texture of the orchestra. So I'm actually slightly riding on the A string with my second finger, even though I'm playing first finger. And you see my hand is just kind of mashed together a little bit. So my fingers are not spread out. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm seeing some really nice stuff. And see, your hand is kind of like a meat hook. So each note, I'm finding a way to mute the strings around. So I play first finger. Now here I go to second finger. And I'm still kind of muting around that with my other fingers. Then I go to 4. See, my first finger right there is draped on the E string and the cross here. Then I go down to 2 on B natural. See how my first finger mutes the E string. And it's funny, I don't know any method book that talks about string muting. If there is one, I haven't seen it. And it's
I have
yeah.
a question about that.
Yeah.
On the cello, since this is in C minor, the C string would resonate a little bit, and I see you have
Yeah.
an extension there. Do you ever deliberately use it for the?
Yeah, that's a great question. Some people, and I have a student who does this, when he plays this opening, the scherzo, he opens his extension so he gets that sympathetic resonance. My concern with that is if the E natural in the overtone series of that open string, open C string, gets activated, then you might have the slight coloration of an E natural floating in there somewhere.
I see. Yeah, yeah,
If you don't want that overtone going while you're playing in C minor. So I personally don't do that. But when he did it, he was experimenting with it. It actually sounded quite nice. It just kind of helped connect things a little bit. But for those, I don't know if anybody has an extension, but often when you have an extension, this also kicks up the string a little higher. So for me, it makes the string crossing a little bit funkier. So that's another reason I don't do it. It's not as comfortable to me. All right. So now let's jump to bar 27, where we go to long but marcato notes. So these have a little space. And notice I put a little front on each of those notes, getting kind of a D sound. Da, da. It's the third line of the excerpt, first note. It's bar 27. I want a quick talk about this spot. When we do the hooked bowing, when you have so our bar 28, 9, 30, 31, 32, 33, you have two C flats with a hooked bow. Interesting thing is in the violins in that moment, they have, in the bars before it goes bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum. They have 3 quarter notes, and the second quarter note is released, which means that first C flat has to be released in our part. So you wouldn't want to play a long C flat. It wouldn't fit with the violin part, so you release the first C flat. So it's not actually a full-length C natural, or C flat, sorry. Same thing coming up. See, I released the low A flat as well. So a little space in there, and if you follow along listening to a recording, that's where you'll hear the violins go bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum. So space between the notes in those 2 bars. Now we're back to sforzato, this time in forte. So it's much bigger. I'm going to play it without the low E flat. There's only a couple of you with extensions. So this is a spot that requires some practice because you have 4 sforzatos and they all need to sound consistent. But then in the 5th bar, you have diminuendo de pianissimo and no sforzato. So, hi, honey. You can come say hi. You want to say hello? Here's my little girl. She's getting ready for bed. All right, honey. All right, Daddy's gonna finish class. It's so funny. She was trying to sneak in, and you guys could all see her, right? It's so cute. All right, so that's my littlest. All right, so you have these sforzatos that you can practice it without the E flat. Just practice it on B flats. Notice that last one, no sforzato. That's important. And practice that with a diminuendo. And then add the E flat to it. And then we go into right back to the stuff we were playing before. Except now it's in B flat minor. But same exact fingering, same exact technical challenges before, with the preparation of each note and the string crossing. I see there's a flag in the chat. Let's see. Oh no, that's the old question. Okay, good. Now, so let's go to right there. So here. Here, I just want to talk a little bit about this. I was talking about curves and roundedness. When you get to this at the end of this F, I feel a little bit of a rounded-ish pause so I can get a nice start to that B flat when I cross the string. There, my left hand was late. And I'm glad that happened. You probably couldn't hear it through Zoom, but the B flat had a little bit of it was stuck before it started. And what happened is I didn't fully get the string down all the way with my left hand. You know, we talk about in string playing how our hands need to be coordinated, but coordination doesn't necessarily mean they happen at the same time. It's actually a sequence. And this is a very important thing to remember if you want to write it down or whatever, just commit it to memory, is that the left hand moves last and first. And what I mean by that is, like in this instance right here, I play this F. I can't move my left hand until the bow is done doing what it needs to do, or else it'll stop the note, right? You'd hear it, it would die. So it moves last after the bow, but then it's got to get to B flat before the bow starts the next B flat. So left hand has to beat the bow or else the note won't speak. So when you're practicing something and a note doesn't speak, it's not always the fault of the right hand. Sometimes it's your left hand has not trapped the string either enough or at the right time. So that's a really important thing to check in on. See if your left hand has done the proper thing in the sequence of trapping the string. So good. So now here we are at the odd tempo. This is one of the trickier parts because of the big shifts involved. There's a bowing underneath the staff, and let's use that bowing. That's the one that I more typically use. The one that's above it actually is the Vienna Philharmonic bowing, but I think I like the one below the staff better, just because it keeps you, even though it breaks Beethoven's slurs, which he probably wouldn't like, but I like that it kind of keeps you in the outer half of the bow. So you just use the staff, the bowing below the staff. So this first few bars are the same thing as the beginning, just a whole step lower. Right, so we play, except we're breaking it. Because it's a lot easier to start this A flat on a up bow. I mean, it takes practice, but you can do it on a down. But it's just, for some people, they're not comfortable carrying the bow at the frog to play a nice soft down bow. This is a little easier. So a little more user-friendly. So I want to talk a little bit about how I find that high A flat. So I finish here, my second finger is on F. I'm already kind of thinking about my third finger is going to be on the A flat, but the reference point that I use in that first page of that technique packet I talked about is those nodes and reference points, natural harmonics. I actually feel my second finger go up to the D harmonic, and right across from that will be my third finger A flat. So I slide up the D string, my hand remembers where the D harmonic is, with second finger, and I go across to third finger. And it's very easy to find that A flat. So try that a few times. Play F, and then go up, play a D natural harmonic and an A flat. So it does a couple of things. It helps you find where A flat is, but it also shows you the distance between A flat and G, because that second finger on D is directly across from where G will be. So it sets up the frame of your hand. So that's a great little mini etude right there. Just play those 4 notes. Talk a little bit about the string crossing too. So I keep my bow on the D string as I shift. And then when my hand gets to the A flat, I cross. And remember what I said before, the left hand has to get there first. So when I get up there, I don't start my up bow until that is fully trapped with my left hand. Otherwise, you'll get a bouah sort of sound, which will sound like this. If you get a bouah shift, then you've started your up bow too soon. So there was a nice sort of classical shift. Good. And then after you get comfortable with that, then to practice the shift from G to B natural. I want to talk a little bit just briefly about what I do to make that clean. One of the bowings that we talked a little bit about in the last class was portato, where you carry the bow, you just slightly slow it down and release the weight a little bit. And this sound. That pulsing. And I mentioned that that technique is very important for masking shifts. And so what I'm doing here, I just slightly lighten and slow the bow during the shift so I don't get, because that would be very un-Beethoven. A tiny little bit of hint of a shift is okay, but nothing slurpy. Nothing slurpy. And the finger pressure in the left hand when you shift should be about the same amount of pressure you use when you play a harmonic. When I make that move, I'm just gliding on the surface of the string, and I'm not trapping it all the way to the fingerboard, because if you close it all the way to the fingerboard, your shift will be slower, and chances are you'll have more gliss. So kind of a slightly lighter finger pressure as you shift from G to B. So this is a starred, S-T-A-R, starred part of the first section that takes a lot of practice. So playing these 6 notes. And also play it reverse. So that's another spot. I love practicing both forward and backward, just to feel how everything connects and just ingrain deeper into my brain and muscle memory where all of those things are. Good. And then this is now the same as the beginning. And important right here is that it stays pianissimo. Very, very important. Don't give it away. Now the crescendo starts. So that's a really important part, is the more dramatic you can make that crescendo by holding back a little bit. So it's a little bit more of a sort of a ski jump trajectory to the crescendo. It sounds much more explosive. Crescendos that are gradual, they're too gradual, they're not as well noticed. So really hold that back. And then we're back to that marcato, but long. So remember, we release that eighth note, or sorry, the half note. Back to our sforzati. And then right back to that sound world that we started with, diminuendo to pianissimo at letter A.
I have a question
Yes, sir.
about the crescendo and also about the subito piano.
Yeah.
Do you make a plan? I noticed it looked like you're using bow speed first and then contact point second, maybe for the
On which one?
Oh, the dee da dee da 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 dee da da.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. So yes. Yes. So at the beginning, it's a bow speed, and then as I go to the higher string and it's getting much louder, then I get more leverage on the crescendo by moving a little closer to the bridge where it's brighter, and as well as my bow speed's getting a little bit faster. Is that it?
You have an amazing subito change in sound quality. Do you have any tricks for that?
Are you talking about at that crescendo?
Yeah, when the theme comes back, pianissimo.
Oh, at letter A, yeah. So this part where it goes. That part, yes, great, thank you. So when I play that, I really lighten my bow pressure so that I can kind of glide on the string and get out to the outer half of the bow. So I get very quickly to that breathy sound, very light bow pressure. So you practice that a few times, starting about where you'll finish that last F before A, which will be around probably just inside the balance point. The only difference with the bar before it is or 2 bars before, is that you're not slamming the bow speed to get a sforzato. So you play. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. It's very effective.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So oh my goodness, it's 8 o'clock. We spent way too much time on that, but that was so much fun. It went goes by really fast. All right, so let's go to the trio. This is the one that probably people are dying to get to, because this one it really confounds people in many ways. This stroke is going to be very tempo dependent. I didn't talk about tempo before with the scherzo, but it says Beethoven has half note equals 96, or dotted half equals 96. Extremely fast. I don't think I've ever played it that fast in performance. Typically, it's somewhere in the mid 80s, probably around 84, 88. It's a little bit slower than that. And then some conductors like to do the trio even a little bit slower, so you get a little more textural clarity, but not Kleiber. That recording I just played for you, his scherzo tempo is about 80, and then he gets to the trio and he kicks it up to about 88. So he actually goes faster in the trio, which is really exciting, and it kind of reflects the major tonality and the sort of the upliftedness of it. But for now, we'll just pretend we have a conductor who likes to do it at 80, which puts it kind of in the ballpark of still possible to do spiccato. When it gets much faster than dotted half equals 80, then we have to use that hybrid stroke that I talked about last time, where the hair, it's kind of like a spiccato, but the hair doesn't leave the string, or it's kind of a brush stroke, because you just don't have time to come off the string. It's just the succession of notes are too fast for the mechanics of spiccato. But for now, let's review how we did spiccato a couple weeks ago, or was it maybe just last week? We'll just do like 3 bounces on a down bow and 3 bounces on an up bow. Just go and do it kind of hovering around the balance point. Last time we did it more in the middle. This time we'll do it a little closer to the frog. And then do 2. And then do 2 right into one another. Good, and now do single strokes. And check your bow angle that you're perpendicular to the string. I'm seeing some saggy tips. Who is that sagging his tip there? Yeah, Jeff. Yeah, check your, there you go. Yeah, and get a little closer to the frog. Yeah, this stroke will be easier a little closer to the frog. Yeah. Good. The faster it gets, if you want to, and later in the movement, when it's soft, you'll be a little bit more in the middle where you can get a lighter spiccato. But for now, we're going to be around the balance point. All right, so keeping that stroke. Now let's get a little faster about, let me get the tempo for 80. Let's go a little slower than that. It's 76. See if you can get that maybe a tiny bit slower than that. And feel that spring in the stick. Remember, you have to throw the bow at the string. I see some people trying to go side to side. You have to dribble like you're dribbling a basketball as your arm travels. Let's do it a little slower. I see some people kind of struggling a little bit. And if you watch the tip of your bow, you see, watch the tip of my bow as I do it. See how it's doing like a windshield wiper thing? If your tip is going straight back and forth, you're not doing it right. Because when I throw the bow down, the tip should spring up. And then when I go the other direction and I throw the bow down, this tip should spring that way. Keep going. I'm kind of watching people. Yeah, and when I drop the bow on a down bow, I'm kind of hitting on the left side of the string. And when I do the up bow, I hit slightly on the right side of the string. So down bow, for now, actually, I see some people struggling. Let's just do down bows. And just drop the bow, let the tip spring up, and feel like you're hitting it about 11 o'clock on the string. And as you drop, you kind of go around the string. You see how my hand kind of falls to the E string? That's right. And you feel that it takes your hand weight out of the way so the bow can spring up. And now do the up bow. I'm going to come at the string like this, and I'm going to hit it on the right side of the string as I kind of hit it and push it to the left. Like a windshield wiper, like I'm kind of doing this as I hit across the string. And then go down to up. And then gradually get faster. Yeah, and you'll feel quickly when you get to the speed limit. And remember, this stroke is kind of around your balance point. So if you can find your balance point, that's right around the region you want to do that, or slightly inside it. Just right around that part. That's where you'll get some both power and spring in the stick. If you want it to be lighter sounding, go a little more toward the middle. If you go to the middle, you hear it lightens it up right away. And you can go faster, a little bit faster in the middle. Because the stick is springier there. And then you go a little closer to the frog, and it's a little more manufactured. You kind of have to carry the bow. All right, so let's practice. This is how I practice this. I like to do this where I can play the stroke close to its tempo, but move my left hand at 1/3 the tempo. And so how I'm going to do that is anytime I have eighth notes, I'm going to play 3 strokes per note at the tempo. So I'm going to go like this. So give that a try. So do triplets on each note. This is, if you don't know where I am, I'm at bar 138, 940, pick up to 150. That's the start of the trio. It's right in the middle of the second page of the excerpt where you see the repeat sign and the key change. Sorry, I should have clarified that. So if you find the key change where it goes to C major, that's the start of the trio. Yeah, I think some people are still kind of looking for it, but so that's a really good way to practice this. And then you can start playing games with it. Like you could do 3 on the first note and only 1 on the second note, 3 on the third note. So every other one has 3. Or you can do it where you play 1 on the first note and 3 on the second. I'll do it in slow motion. that's an example of making an etude out of a technical challenge encountered in a piece of repertoire. I'm going to go on from this point. We'll play it just with as written, a little under tempo. Now, this moment right here, we talked on my bowing skills sheet. There's recovery. So, and I recover to the up bow. And then each of these quarter notes is a kind of almost martelet, which is each note starts from the string, but then releases. So each note starts from the string, draws and releases, and then grabs and draws the string and releases. That's how you can get a little resonance on the back side of each note. This is an important part I need to quick talk about. This E is from the string, and then the first eighth note is now off the string. So, off the string. So that takes practice. It's also like the beginning. The very first C pickup starts on the string, then I'm off. Same thing. So that E starts from the string, ba, and now I lift and then start throwing the bow. Bum, bup, 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 bum. Bum, bup, 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 bum. Bum, bup, 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 bup. So you can make an etude out of that. You can play scales that way. Just on one note at a time, start from the string, an up bow that goes to off the string. So on, off. Again. And then next. So you can just take that bowing pattern and just play a one octave scale to like make a little mini etude out of it to help you with your problem solving. All right, so going from here. Another candidate for mini etude practice, doing 3 strokes per note. Another one that's good to do, which I didn't do before, is a game where you accent only the up bows. And that helps you kind of, because our up bows tend to be weaker than our down bows on spiccato. So it's a fun game to just kind of kick those up bows into motion. So right there, yeah, I was accenting all the ups. Yeah, good. Now, after the repeat sign, 1, 2. So it's the same pattern as before. The pickup quarter note starts from the string, and then I'm bouncing. 1, 2. 1, 2. Recover. Same thing. The F was from the string. Now I'm off. Now this part I wanted to quick talk about. Going from a spiccato to a long note. So what am I going to do so I don't get that? What I do is the very last bounce is low. and to the side, so I don't have to come way down on top of the long note. So my bounce actually gets lower. So there's another etude you could just do on one note. And I'm landing that long note and holding the bow into the string. All right. Now I'm going to jump to letter B. And this is a different type of challenge because now we have these dynamic changes. So the first one after letter B is forte. So just like before, keep it loud. That first one, forte. The second one starts forte and then diminuendo to about mezzo piano. So I'm going to repeat that a few times. So I play the pickup forte. This is now 1, 2, 3, 4 bars after letter B. And another important thing is, remember I talked about the muting. When I play this, if you can see my left hand, my second finger is muting the A string. And then when I play the F, my first finger mutes the A string. So, because I don't want those other strings ringing. I don't know if you can see that, but my left hand is always doing a bunch of activity to mute the neighboring strings. 1, 2. And then, now we're at mezzo piano. Beethoven writes piano. I changed it in the part to mezzo piano because we need to cheat a little bit because we got a long way down to go because it gets really soft. So. Now, this part, the sempre piano, I'm a little more in the middle of the bow for the bounce because it's easier to play. This is the last line of the excerpt. It's easier to play a soft spiccato a little closer to the middle, so between the balance point and the middle. And so this is important to practice in scales. So you can do it like we did before. And then go to 2 bounces. But notice I'm doing it at a very soft dynamic. A lot of times we don't practice our strokes in varied dynamics, and that's so important. Sometimes you come across a student that really struggles with this sempre piano, a soft spiccato, and then you say, well, how often do you practice soft spiccato? And they're like, well, never. It's only when I'm working on this excerpt. And it's like, well, that's why it's hard. So isolate the problem and then make a little mini etude out of it. So that, and then 2, and then 1 stroke. So I'm just really trying to see how soft I can make it. Because Beethoven writes sempre più piano, which means always getting softer. So when you get to that last G, it's like triple piano.
Scott, we have one question from Jessica Chang.
Yes,
How do you place your thumb on the left hand?
On the left hand. Okay, great. So generally, my thumb, I'll turn this up a little bit. Let's see if we can get the angle here. So it depends on what I'm doing. Generally, my thumb is kind of like when your hand just hangs like this, it kind of hangs out between first finger and second finger. But sometimes I'm pivoting and my thumb actually might stay in one spot and I move my hand around it. That's called a pivot technique. So like here, there you can see my hand is tracking with it. So that's more of a Samandel school. A Rebaf school might play this and leave his thumb in place, which I can't do that. That's not my school of playing. But so see, my thumb is kind of tracking with my hand. If I'm playing something legato, it might actually do that other. But in a case like this, where I need a little bit more of a kind of meat and potatoes approach, it's going to track with my hand.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I tend to press my thumb really hard on
Yeah.
the side. Is there any way you would suggest us how to like prevent that?
Yeah. So a few things. One is thinking of the thumb as a guide. So as you practice, your thumb really just tracks lightly as a guide. My thumb is rarely ever actually engaging the instrument. Another thing is to check how you're balancing the instrument. If you're holding up the instrument with your thumb, like if you're holding the instrument, you take your hands off and the bass falls backwards, that means that the bass is probably leaning in your thumb. And that's also going to cause more thumb pressure because you're holding up the bass with your thumb. And so it's a vicious cycle. You're probably squeezing and feeling the weight of the instrument in your thumb, which where you don't. If your thumb is acting as a guide, it's able to do so only because the instrument is balanced properly. So that it's either leaning slightly forward and into my fingers and not the thumb, or just freely balancing. So you'd have to check your posture in the way you're engaging with the instrument to see if that's part of the problem.
I guess we kind of go.
It wants to fall back, right? So what you need to do, I think, is turn the instrument a little bit and find your hip bone, you know, like on your belt line, right? And then you find there's this little bone on your hip, probably right around here. And the back of your bass should be just inside that. And then the other thing is your left knee should be against the bottom corner block on the back. So the left knee will also help hold up the bass. And then so I've got the bass balancing now. If I move my left knee out of the way, the bass will swing forward. So yeah.
Yes, it works. Okay.
Yeah, see, there it is. Good. So now your bass is balanced, and you probably won't need your thumb as much, and you'll be able to get around. Another quick fix, I mean, not that quick, but is to sit. Sitting players tend to have less problems with their thumb because the bass is now leaning back a little more, and now I can kind of hang, and I can play on any string without my thumb. But there are trade-offs to sitting as well. So, which I get into in that handout. So, but I like, even though as a standing player, it doesn't work on the lower strings because you do need a little bit more thumb on the lower strings that leverage. But on the upper strings, certainly the G string, you can practice without the thumb on the neck. So like doing scales, just do like an A major scale. It's real weird because you don't have all your reference points, but so just practicing scales without the thumb on the neck and see how easy it is to glide around. Wait, where did you go? I lost you. Oh, there you are. Yeah, my screen's moved around. Okay, there you are.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, of course. Yeah. I have a few minutes left, and I have to go to another Zoom meeting. Are there any other questions that I can hopefully answer? You can either unmute yourself or chat. Bueller, anybody? Bueller?
But I have a one if nobody else is going to chime in.
Yeah.
The spiccato, when you cross a string, you move the point where the bow is touching.
That's correct. Yep.
For you guys, the bridge is so much bigger. Do you
Yep.
actively compensate for that? In other words, if you're
No,
You don't.
when you're going at full speed, you don't have time to change that contact point. So that's a great question. And not only is it that our strings are wider, but our bows are shorter.
Right.
So it's even more exacerbated, the relative distance that you're traveling. And so what he's referring to is, if I use my fingers as an example, if I'm bouncing on the A string and then I go to the D string, now I'm like an inch further out on the stick. So it's going to feel different. So if I'm here and then I cross over to this string, now I'm further out on the stick by about an inch. So getting comfortable with that. And then sometimes you can, in some passages, if you're going to move to another string and hang out there for a while, then you can adjust that contact point. But if you're making quick string crossings, you don't have time to move that at all. You just have to grab it where it lies. Thankfully, because we approach the instrument in this direction, the fatter, heavier, thicker strings, when we cross over, are closer to the frog.
We do have a question from Kevin about speeding the spiccato up.
Yeah, great question. So you have to remember that spiccato does have a speed limit. So it'll get to the point where the spiccato mechanics will start to break down and you won't be able to go any faster. So in this case, using eighth notes at dotted half note, after about dotted half note equals 80, the spiccato is going to start to kind of come unglued a little bit, because it's just not going to work. So then that's when you have to go to a sort of what I call an onf, so O-N-F-F stroke, which is kind of hybrid on off the string. The hair does not have time to leave the string. So it's a similar kind of sensation. So I'm bouncing the bow, but I'm not leaving the string really. I wish you could see, I don't know if you can see it. I can't get the camera at the right angle, but there's a compression and release happening, and the bow's still rocking, but I don't actually go off the string. Does that answer your question?
That's pretty, he's writing ventricle. Yes, I guess it is.
Yeah.
One, I know you have to go, so we totally understand. One question about vibrato tips.
Great. Okay. So vibrato is gonna be relative to where it starts, or what position you're in. And when you're in the lower register, it comes from your shoulder. So there's this rocking mechanism. And the easiest way I can think about it is, I like to think about the base knuckles of my hand. Maybe even just think about the middle finger base knuckle and feeling that rocking back and forth. Yeah, and you can even just put your hand on a surface and feel that rocking motion. Now, as you go higher and you get around this region of the instrument, you're still rocking, but where that comes from now, it starts to get a little bit close, more in the elbow. You can really see it here. When I'm in the upper register, it's an opening and closing of the elbow joint to make the hand rock. Whereas when I'm in the lower register, it's a rotation from the shoulder. If I try to do my elbow, it does this. But then I get up here and it's from the elbow. The important thing is the base knuckle. You feel that base knuckle rocking. And how I would, yeah. Now be careful not to do a twisting motion, because look at what happens if I twist. The thing that's moving is the finger, but that's not what we want. We want to rotate around the finger. So it's a different mechanism. If you do this, that's the wrong mechanism. You want to rotate around the fingertip. So that's really, really important. And that's usually if you're playing and you get a shivery vibrato, your hand is just freaking out, and you get this kind of jittery vibrato. What's probably happening, what I've seen with students, is they're trying to do this. They're trying to twist their forearm. But as you can see, it's the fingertip that moves, but we want the fingertip to stay in one spot on the note and rotate around it. So you want to create an arc. You want to create an arc with the base knuckles of your hand. Yeah, so feel those. In fact, one thing that I've had some students do, and I learned this technique actually from Richard Aaron at University of Michigan, he takes a rubber band and just puts it around the base knuckles of their hand so that you can feel it. You can feel where those base knuckles are, and you can feel the rotation. And I've had some good success with students doing that. It's kind of like, oh yeah, now I feel it. They feel what part should be rocking instead of trying to twist like this, which moves the finger and not the upper part, not the arm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then practicing in different rhythms. I think I gave a vibrato. There's a vibrato section in that handout that I give, and it has just like doing different rhythms. You know, ultimately you want vibrato to be sort of instinctive and just sort of reactive to the emotional impulse in the music. So you don't want it to be too calculated, but doing things kind of calculated can help you just learn how to control it. So doing wow 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 wow, doing subdivisions of rhythms will help train you to control your vibrato. Is that good? I gotta run. My meeting's starting.
Is it okay? We'll send your email to the participants. We have a couple of questions about maybe setting up lessons.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, please do.
Okay, great. Thank you
Hey.
so much.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Yes, it's my pleasure. It's wonderful to see all of you, and I look forward to hearing from you. And hopefully, we could get together in person one day and make some.
Plan a bass bash.
Yeah, have a bass bash. Have a actual physical lesson where we can see each other doing things and hear each other, because it's music. It's about sound, you know. So, but it's really great to see all of you. And I've got to run. I'm already late for this other meeting. So, all right, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.